Thank you, Myron, for that very warm welcome. I do see a lot of familiar faces. I really appreciate being invited back again. I enjoyed our conversation very much last time, and I'm looking forward to continuing it tonight. It was a little bit difficult to figure out exactly how to structure the talk for this evening because I knew that some of you would have been here before, and I don't want to repeat a lot of things that I said last time around, but I knew that some of you would be here for the first time, and I don't want to leave anybody confused. And so I thought what I would do is kind of start off and revisit a few things just to kind of remind us where we left off last time. And then we'll go in a little bit deeper and we'll try to understand a little bit more in depth, and then we'll pick up our conversation. At the end of last time, we were having a really interesting discussion about AI and society and economics and health and all kinds of things like that. And I'm hoping we can kind of pick that back up again and you can probe me with a lot of interesting questions. I've already been given a card of someone who says they want to debate me on this topic. And so I haven't even started yet and I've got a debate partner proposed. So I'm looking forward to that. And so, yeah, let's get started. I want to start this evening with a little bit of a story, and it's going to seem a little strange at first, but I'll explain to you why we're doing it in a second. And I'm going to hope that the audio video works okay, because I've got some sound recorded reading out this first page of the story as we go.
In a quiet village where the sky brushes the fields in hues of gold, young Mia discovered a map leading to forgotten treasures. Little did she know her cat Whiskers had a secret. He was the guardian of the map, tasked with guiding Mia to not only the treasure, but also to her destiny.
What do you think about my narration there? It was, it was a little dry. I played that for my wife, and she said, "Wow, were you falling asleep when you narrated that?" But what she did not say, interestingly, after being married to me, by the way, for 35 years this year, she did not say, "Hey, that's not your voice. That's something you made with AI," because that's exactly what that was. That was not my voice. I hope it sounded a lot like me. When I listened to it, my eyes opened wide and I said, "Wow, that's scary. That sounds exactly like me." At least as far as I think I sound like, right? We all know our voice sounds weird to ourselves, but I thought it sounded just like me. And in fact, what's really amazing about it is if you listen again, you would hear that it doesn't just read through it. It even kind of does some very human-like things.
In a quiet village where the sky brushes the fields in hues of gold, young Mia discovered a map leading to forgotten treasures. Little did she know her cat Whiskers had a secret. He was the guardian of the map, tasked with guiding Mia to not only the treasure, but also to her destiny.
In a quiet village, it like has a little pause in there where it says, in a quiet village where the sky brushes the fields in hues of gold. This story is nothing. I just wanted something to read so that you could hear this creation that was not my voice. Because it's, I think, key to a lot of the things that I want to talk about. In order to do this, all I had to do, by the way, I didn't have to do any profound AI research. I didn't have to train a model and do some high mathematics. I went to a website called 11labs.io, and I recorded myself through my webcam reading some things that it prompted me with. I just read, and then it said just talk, so I just talked for a while. I did a part of this presentation for 11labs.io, and after about 2.5 minutes of listening to me banter on about stuff, it said, "Okay, I got it." And then I pasted this in, and it read it out back in my voice, which is incredible, right? I remember watching a movie in the early 90s maybe it was the late 80s, one of those Bourne movies, Jason Bourne the Spy, where the CIA had some incredible technology where they could clone people's voices over a phone call and make people think it was that person talking. And I remember thinking, oh wow, I don't know if they'll ever be able to do anything like that. Now you can go to a website and type in some text and have it come out in anybody else's voice that you want to. The things that we are able to do with these technologies are incredible. And so my question for you is that artificial intelligence? I mean, is that AI at all? Making a voice that sounds like my voice? I mean, I think of myself as relatively intelligent, but I can't make a voice that sounds like anybody else's. I can't imitate someone else's voice perfectly, but these tools that we've developed can do that. And a lot of things get tagged with this name AI. We call a lot of things AI. But I want to kind of focus in on a particular kind of AI tonight and talk about some of the things that are happening in the field. And some of them in just the 3 months since the last time we spoke together have changed dramatically, actually, in the last 3 months, because this field is moving so fast and things are changing so much. So I want to start off like I did last time, just by saying, let's be clear about what we're talking about. What is AI anyways? Artificial intelligence. First and most importantly, artificial intelligence is software. It's a computer program. It's a program like any other. Microsoft Word, Excel, it's just code that runs on a computer to do tasks. The thing that makes AI so strange to us and seems so different than the other kinds of programs that we run is that it does things that we normally associate with people and the brains that people have. Things like being able to learn from experience, make a mistake and then go, oh, that was wrong, I'm not going to do that again. I'll learn from that mistake and I'll improve my performance. If Microsoft Word does something wrong, I tell it to bold and it underlines or something. If I do the same things, it's going to do the same thing again. It always behaves the same way. Computer programs are very deterministic. You do the same things, they behave the same way. But these AI programs are different. They can learn from their experience and get better at things. That's something we associate in animals and humans with some level of intelligence, the ability to learn. They can do things like reason. They can say, well, if there's a book that's on top of the table and the table is above the floor, then the book must be above the floor because the book's on the table and the table's on the floor. And they can figure things out. Things that we try to teach children to do early in school, logic and reasoning and figuring out the consequences of actions. These are things that AI programs, at least by appearances, seem to be able to do. And then they can create things. And this is what's getting a lot of attention right now, is this business of creating things, art and writing and music and videos and my voice. They can create things, and those things can seem to have creativity. One of the things I did last time when we spoke is I asked AI to write a poem in the style of Robert Frost about artificial intelligence. And it wrote a poem that sounded an awful lot like a Robert Frost poem about AI. And it created that in a sense. Now, among the person who gave me this card and other people who want to debate me will definitely have something to say about whether or not it's really creating anything at all. And that's something I'd like to talk more about tonight, is there really any creativity going on in this world of AI? But we'll get to that in just a little bit. So I want to start off, and I want to give you a little bit of a feeling about how it does this. Because I think if we understand how AI works under the hood, if we get under the hood and look at the engine in there, we'll have a better understanding of what we're seeing when we see AI outputs, what we're seeing when we use an AI tool, and whether or not we should worry when we see all of the hype that's been printed about whether AI is going to change the world for the better or change the world for the worst, and what's been going on with AI. And so we're going to start off, and we're going to kind of talk a little bit about some of the things that we talked about last time. But I'm not going to take as much time to do the introduction portion. Instead, we're going to kind of dive down deep, because one thing I discovered last time is that we've got a room full of very smart people here, and the questions that I was asked were very probing and very interesting, and a lot of people said, tell me more about how this actually works underneath. Don't pull any punches. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper this time. So first of all, last time I mentioned that there are two big kinds of AI in the world. Ever since the beginning of AI, back in the 1950s, when people first started thinking about can we make computers reason and think like people, there have been two big camps, groups of people who tried to do AI in different ways. The first way is called symbolic AI. That's over here on the left. And in symbolic AI, we try to take the world and we try to write it down as a collection of rules. We want the computer to understand things about the world. We want it to know that if I add 5 and 5, I get 10. We want it to know that if I mix blue paint and red paint, I'll get purple paint. We want it to know things like that. And so the way that we do it is we have somebody sit down and type out common sense things about the world as rules, as lines of a computer program, things that say stuff like this. This is not very readable. But nonetheless, this is the kind of rules that we make to allow AI to understand things. If x is above y and y is above z, then x must be above z. So these are the kinds of things. But you can imagine that's a simple thing that we all know. If you put something on top of something else and that's on something, you're going to be above it. We all know that. We learn that when we're very young, when we start stacking up blocks and things and learning about colors and things like that. Think of all the things we have to type in to try to get a computer just to understand basic things about the world. What's alive and what's not alive? What makes a cat different from a rabbit? What is it that if my car stops on the road might be the cause of that? There's so much. And so one of the limitations of this symbolic approach has always been who writes the rules and how do we get people to spend enough time writing down like everything we could possibly know or say or understand so that a computer can start reasoning, a computer program can start acting like it understands the world around us. This is really hard. And so in the 1950s as well, another camp of AI scientists emerged, people who said there's another way to do it. We can do it with a tool called machine learning. And these days, machine learning is getting a lot of attention. We'll look at that more in just a second. In machine learning, we don't give any rules. We rely on a computer's ability to understand patterns, things that sort of repeat in data. And the only way that we teach the computer to become more intelligent, and I'll put that in air quotes, intelligent, because we're going to talk about whether it is or not, is by giving examples. And so we say, here's a picture, and this is a picture of a monkey. And also, this is a picture of a monkey. And this is a picture of a monkey, and so on and so on. And we give it tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of pictures of monkeys in different settings. Monkeys upside down, monkeys in trees, different species of monkeys. We also give it pictures of things that are not monkeys. This is a car, this is a tricycle, this is a rabbit, this is a squirrel. And eventually, we have clever programs that identify the patterns, the things that are consistently different. They begin to say, hey, all these pictures of monkeys have something in common. And that's how it actually learns things, is by understanding commonalities or patterns in a bunch of data. So machine learning, we just learn by example. It's a lot similar to the way that we teach children when they're very, very young, right? We point and we say bunny, and we point and we say bunny, and the child begins to say, okay, I'm starting to understand what this bunny thing means. And at some point, they point to a cat and say, bunny. And you say, no, that's a kitty. And as they get older and they develop language skills, then we begin to be able to explain it's a bunny because it's got a little puffy cotton tail and big long ears. See, the kitty's got a longer tail. Now we're working in symbolic AI realm. But when we first start teaching things, we live over here in the world of just give lots and lots and lots of examples. And with those examples, let the child, or in this case, let the computer, begin to try to understand what's going on. What's the similarity? Now that seems pretty hard. How do I write a program that can take tens of thousands of pictures of monkeys and begin to understand what a monkey is? That's what machine learning is all about. And that's what I'm going to kind of focus on tonight. We're not going to talk too much about the symbolic AI world tonight. I have colleagues over at Wright State University who would love to spend time talking about symbolic AI and why in many ways it's better than the machine learning. But right now, everybody's talking about machine learning. And when you hear all of the stuff about AI that's going on, when people say AI is going to break the economy, or AI is going to fix the economy, or AI is going to destroy our children, or it's going to help our children, all of those folks, for the most part right now, are talking about what's going on in machine learning. Because the large language models that everybody's interacting with, Claude and ChatGPT and Alexa and Gemini, those are examples of machine learning. Last time when I was here, I started kind of giving you a picture of how this all works. And to give an illustration of that, I asked everybody to take out their phone, and I said, start typing a text message. We don't have to do it tonight. I'm going to breeze over it a little bit. But start typing a text message. And if you do that, if you're texting someone, you know that after you type the first word, you say, hello, and then immediately on the bottom of the screen, there's some choices that you can pick as to what maybe you want for the next word. So you don't have to type it all out. You can just click on it. Right down at the bottom it says, I've typed hello, I'm, and then right here it'll say in or sorry or not. You get a choice and you can pick one of those. And then if you don't want one of those words, then you have to type out what you're talking about. And the question I asked is, how do you think it decides? When I said I'm, how come it said in and sorry and not as the three choices that it popped up there? And folks who were here on that night cleverly deduced it probably just says what's the most common word after I'm. And that's exactly right? So we go get a bunch of books, we get a bunch of text, and we look and we just write down everywhere the word I'm is, and say we go get 45 library books, and every time we see I'm, we write down what's the next word. And then we figure out that, hey, 16% of the time after I'm is in. I'm in. And that turns out to be the most common word after I'm. And the second most common is sorry, with maybe 12%. And the third most common is not. So we just do it with statistics. We just get a bunch of books, and we make a little table. We do that for every word. So we start with A. What's the most common word after A? Or what are the three most common words in all of these books? And then we make a big table. It says, okay, A, here's the three words, and here's how often they show up. Cat, here's the words that typically follow cat. In, here's the words that typically follow in. It's very straightforward, statistical. It's always the same. That's not so far from how we train AI systems. Believe it or not, ChatGPT, how many people have used ChatGPT or one of the other LLMs out there? Not very many. So let's take a moment first. I'm just going to change my agenda a little bit, because if you haven't done it, it's worth experiencing what this thing looks like and why everybody is talking about it. So let's pop over to a web browser for a second here. I've got one up here somewhere. Here we go. And let's, if I can find my mouse cursor. Do you guys see it? There it is. Let's just go to chatgpt.com. And let's say, move this out of the way, and we'll say, hi, I'm giving a live talk on AI and using you as an example. Please say hello to the audience. Ha. It's this way. I'm a computer scientist. Please don't make fun of my spelling. It's atrocious. Fortunately, AI usually fixes it for me. Oh, you can't see that. That's horrifying. Let's fix that, shall we? Let's fix that. You just hear me talking but don't see it. So I just went to ChatGPT, and the font is too small, so let's see if we can make it bigger. Yeah, there we go. And I typed, I'm giving a live talk on AI and using you as an example. Please say hello to the audience. And ChatGPT said, hello everyone, it's a pleasure to join you. You're currently watching a live interaction with an AI system designed to assist with reasoning, analysis, and problem solving across a wide range of domains. I don't think or understand in the human sense, but I can synthesize patterns from vast amounts of data to generate useful, context-aware responses in real time. If you have questions, technical, conceptual, or even a bit playful, I'm ready. It just generated that. And the funny thing is, if I asked it again, it would probably respond a little bit differently. But the way that this thing was trained, it seems like it's intelligent, doesn't it? It feels like you're talking to a friend. You can say here's a question I asked it just the other day. Can I get this thing to, I got to go down to the bottom. I got to shrink it again, go way down here, and say, my car is making a knocking sound when it first starts. What might that be? And voila, here it comes. You can see it coming out as it, I'm going to put it in quotes, thinks it here. Here comes the answer. And it says, okay, a knocking sound on startup is a useful diagnostic signal. It narrows things down quite a bit. The key variables are, and it tells me it could be an oil-related issue. Here's what you want to check. Check your oil, check the viscosity and the age. It could be a hydraulic lifter tick. if it's a rhythmic knocking, and we could go on, right? It knows about cars. It knows what the weather is today. If I decide I want to plan a nice 3-day trip to Charlottesville, it will tell me some good places to go eat and some suggested places to go out for to entertain myself during the day. AI is kind of like your know-it-all friend who knows a little bit about everything you ask about and will confidently give you an answer about anything. And just like your know-it-all friend, interestingly, sometimes AI is confidently wrong. And you can't tell when. It will just answer your question and it will sound exactly like it knows what it's talking about. We'll talk more about this when we get to hallucination in just a little bit. But this is remarkable, right? This feels like I'm texting with a person on the other end. And in fact, one of the things that I mentioned last time is that for many, many years, the litmus test that computer scientists had decided upon to decide if we had ever achieved intelligence. So take yourself back like 15, 20 years before AI was on everybody's lips and everyone was talking about AI. Computer scientists were still trying to create things that looked like they were intelligent. We were asking ourselves philosophically, how will we know when it's intelligent? And a fellow named Alan Turing came up with the famous Turing test. And the Turing test was, if you can put a human on one end of a terminal and have somebody type to that human and the human types back, and you can put a computer program on the other one and have a person text something to the computer program and the computer program types things back. If the person over here can't tell which one's the computer program and which one's the human, we have to call it intelligent. Well, guess what? We lost that game. Like a year ago, they did this test with modern LLMs. People can't tell. We're 50-50, flip a coin. We can't tell if there's a person on the other end very reliably because these things seem so human. And how do they do that? This can't be just like looking up text, right? It can't be something like look it up in a book. Nobody, I mean, I can ask it something that probably, so one thing that people will say often is, when we train an AI system, like ChatGPT here, essentially we give it all of the text on the internet. Everything that's out there, Wikipedia and the entire Library of Congress and all of the transcripts from the proceedings of the United Nations for the last 35 years and everything else we've got in textual form. We give it to the AI and we say, learn what the patterns are in here. And then when I type, a question, look for similar things in everything everyone's ever written everywhere and kind of respond in a similar way. Learn the patterns, just like you do with the pictures of monkeys. Learn the patterns. But it can't be that simple because I can type something that I'm positive nobody has ever typed before. Actually, this one I typed before once because I was trying to give, in fact, an example of something that no one had ever typed before for my students. I said, why, sorry, can't type very well. Why do pangolins make terrible fighter pilots? Why do pangolins make terrible fighter pilots? And it says here, because they're great at rolling into defense, but terrible at staying on target. I think it was trying to make a joke. It did not make a good joke. But none, oh yeah, hard to dogfight when your first instinct is to curl up into a ball. I'm pretty sure that nowhere on the internet is that question asked and somebody come up. So there is a pattern that it's being followed, but it has to be doing it in a very general way, right? So here we are. We've interacted a little bit with some AI. Let me bring this back over to my other screen here, if I can. There we go. Get it out of the way. So we're back into our talk. We'll come back to that in a little bit. Oh, I got to move this one out too. Sorry. There we go. We've got our talk. Okay. So let me just talk a little bit about how it does it. So it starts with this same game. We take everything that's ever been written and we start giving it to an AI program. And we take sentences and we play a game called the masked language model. But the masked language model is just guess the word. We just take a sentence like, there is nothing to fear but fear itself. And then we blank out one word from it. Like, there is nothing to fear but blank. And we ask the AI, guess what the missing word is. And when it gets it wrong, we give it a little bit of feedback. We say, nope, that wasn't it. It was actually fear. There's nothing to fear but fear. And it learns a little bit. And then we give it another sentence, something out of Shakespeare, and we blank out one word. And we keep playing this game for a very, very long time. Now, fortunately, computers can play it a lot faster than we can, right? It can do it through this millions, billions of times per second. It can look at a sentence with a word blanked out, guess what it is, and we can say yes, no, yes, no. And if you do it long enough, it starts getting kind of good at it. It starts getting pretty decent at guessing what the missing word is. And it starts being really good at quoting Shakespeare. But all of this text also comes from things like the full journals of the American Medical Association. And so it starts getting really good at filling in missing words in sentences like, if the person's symptoms are X, Y, and Z, the most likely diagnosis is, and they start being pretty good at filling in that word there. It's just a missing word game. They're just learning patterns in text and getting really good at filling in the missing words. But when you do that well enough with a big enough bunch of data, you begin to start to sound awfully intelligent. And that's what these things are essentially doing at heart. Early versions of ChatGPT. So first of all, let me do this. I'll go back one more time. We don't do this with just one word. We don't say, I'm, what's the missing word here, right? We give it big, long chunks of text and tell it to fill in the missing word as we're training these. And then it's able to take in a big, long chunk of text and fill in something that's missing in the end. And in the early days, those big, long chunks of text were things like 512 words long. So you would give it a 512 words, so you could give it like part of a patient record from a medical record and give it 512 words describing symptoms and how they're feeling that day, and then say the likely diagnosis is, and have it fill in the missing word there. That was in 2018, so like, a piece of paper's worth of words. And by GPT-2, the next model in 2019, we could give it 1,000 words, and it could pay attention to all 1,000 of those words before filling in the next one. Modern versions of like GPT-5, which is at the core of ChatGPT, can look at as much as 1 million words. You can give it a library shelf worth of information, and then say, and the patient's diagnosis should be, and it will fill in the missing word. That's where the smart comes from, at least in part, that it can look at a lot of text, a lot of data at one time, kind of see the patterns in all of that data and figure out what should come next. So there's a reason, actually. It's not just because it's slow. If we go back to that example where I was typing into ChatGPT, let's go back there just one more time. It's a little cumbersome to pull the slides around, but I think it's worth it. If I ask it a question like, what is the weather outside today here in Dayton, Centerville? Should I go fishing? Let's see what it thinks. So watch as it generates text. You can't read it because it's too small, but look, it's coming out a little at a time. See, it's not all at once. It's like someone's typing really, really fast as it comes out. You see the sentences coming out a little piece at a time as they come out there. There's a reason for that. It is basically doing exactly what I said. It's saying, okay, if somebody asks me what the weather in Centerville is, now it has some extra tools. It can look up the weather on the web and do some other things, right? And then if they ask me, should I go fishing? It's just saying to itself, what is the next word I should say? Just one word. What's the next word? Maybe it says the. And then it goes through that whole thing again and says, okay, they asked you what the weather is, and in Dayton today, and should they go fishing, and you said the, what's the next word you should say? It literally does it one word at a time, figuring out what it should say next, one word. You've talked to people like this, right? They don't know what they're going to say until it comes out of their mouth. That's exactly how AI works. It doesn't know what it's going to say until it gets to that very next word, and then it figures out what should be the next word I say, one word at a time, which is kind of remarkable, but that's how it works inside. Okay, so now, this is better. I can do it that way. Yeah, okay. So I want to give you sort of 3 big ideas to kind of understand underneath it all what all of these programs are doing And then we're going to really dig into the good stuff, like what does it mean for us? What can I do with it? What should I be afraid of? What should I be excited about? We're going to talk about those things. But first, I want to get just a little further into how it works underneath. I want to tell you 3 things that you should know. The first thing you need to know to understand AI is that computers, in their heart, in their brains, on the inside of a computer, they can only really do one thing: math. And not even very hard math. This, and I'm going to send this around so you can like hold it if you've never held one of these before. This is the central processing unit of a computer. I pulled this out of my son's gaming computer because he wanted a faster one, and so I bought him one, and I pulled this one out, and I thought, oh, this will be handy when I give talks because it's kind of interesting to hold and feel what this thing is. This is the brain of a computer. It is the central processing unit. It does all of the thinking, in quotes, that a computer does. This thing does about 5 billion operations per second, and each one of those operations is a little bit of math. Before any computer program can run, it first has to be translated into a stream of instructions for this CPU. Everything in the computer eventually goes to this CPU and says, here's what I want you to do. But here's the remarkable thing. You know, computers can do amazing stuff, right? They can play music, they can show you videos, you can live chat with people halfway across the globe, but their brain here, the operations that it can do are things like add 2 numbers together. That's one of them. It can subtract 2 numbers. It can multiply a couple of numbers, and it can divide. This thing can't even do a square root. Your calculator can do that, but this thing, it only has simple operations like add and divide and subtract, and that's it. So everything we want a computer to do first has to be turned into simple mathematical operations, not even complicated ones, on numbers. So if we're going to have ChatGPT, somehow the things I'm typing to it have to become numbers first. That's really important to understand what's going on in the heart of an AI. I'm going to skip a few because we're rolling through time. This always happens. We never have enough time. I'm going to have to come back for a 3rd, maybe a 4th time, Myron. I'm sorry. There's no way to get it all done. Everything's got to be converted to numbers. So when we take something like a prompt to ChatGPT and say, I've got chartreuse paint all over the first thing that happens is it all gets translated into a bunch of numbers. And we actually break it apart first. We don't just use one number for every word. It's not really like this where it says I gets a number 21 and got gets 579 and chartreuse gets 1214. We break it apart into its main component and any prefixes or suffixes. And those are called tokens. And you'll hear this sometimes when people are talking about AI. You'll hear terms like, oh, I used up my token count, or I don't have any tokens left this month. This is why they use tokens instead of word. That way, we don't have to represent painted as one number, and painting as another number, and painter as another number, and paints as another number. Instead, we can have one number for paint and a number for it happened in the past, ED. And when we put them together, we get paint in the past, painted. And we can have the same number for paint and a number for going on right now, ing. And when we put those together, we get paint going on right now, painting. And so tokens make it a little easier for us to process these things. And what we really want to have happen is words that are similar should have similar numbers, because remember that AI is looking for patterns. And here's something funny about the English language. Swift and fast and quick and rapid don't look anything like each other. There are 4 very different words. They have a different number of letters. They start with different letters. They have nothing in common, but they all mean pretty much the same thing. It'd be nice if when I give them to the computer, if I give you the rabbit was swift, those numbers looked really close to the numbers for the rabbit was fast, or the rabbit was rapid, or the rabbit was quick. And so we use numbers because I can say, hey, let's have the numbers that we use for swift and rapid and fast and quick be really close to one another. We use 42, 43, 44, and 45 instead of a bunch of words that look nothing like each other. So the first thing we do is we translate it all into numbers. And then we take a bunch of text It's called the pile. So this is my representation of the pile. We take a bunch of text, which is basically everything on the internet, we convert it to numbers, and we start playing that guessing game with the artificial intelligence, saying, guess what the missing word is, guess what the missing word is, and it slowly, slowly gets better at it over time. And we've talked a lot about big idea number 3, but I want to show you an example of it. So now, I've got all these words, and I'm playing this game with the AI. Okay? And the game, again, is I take some text out of a book, and I hide a word, and I say, guess the word. Now, somehow, as the AI guesses and gets it right and wrong, it's got to learn. It's got to get better. When I say, no, that was wrong, the actual word was fear. It's got to learn something. How does it get better over time? It's actually, I don't know if you've ever seen kids playing this game where there's something hidden around the room, and the kids move around, and they go, colder, colder, and they go, oh, okay, warmer, warmer, you're getting really hot, okay, and they find the thing, right? The warmer, colder game, that's actually very, very close to the way that we train AI machines. What we do is we take these simple little computational units. Now here's where I'm not going to get too deep into the math part, but actually, again, this is something really simple. This is an artificial neuron, and you may have heard machine learning or ChatGPT referred to as neural networks, networks of neurons. This is the reason. We take something that does a really, really simple operation. This thing takes 3 numbers, multiplies them by 3 other numbers we call weights, and puts out the result. And it passes it through something that kind of converts it from 0 to 1. So if it's a really big number, it makes it a 1. And if it's a small number, it makes it a 0. And that's it. This thing is essentially a model artificial neuron. It doesn't do very much. It takes 3 numbers, it multiplies them by 3 other numbers, and then it sends out a result. But this is the core element of what a neural network does. This is all that it does. To start with, we have something like this that let's say that this neuron's job is to decide if the next word the AI says should be red. Okay? And so in here come 3 words, the previous 3 words. But remember, they're numbers, right? So the car was, 3 words. We convert them to numbers. And then we have some weights here. So 1, 0, 0. Where do these weights come from? These numbers that we're going to multiply? This is the knowledge inside of the neural network. This is what it learns. We start out, they're all just random. We just make them up. We say, computer, generate a bunch of random values and put them in there. So all it knows is garbage, basically. And it says, okay, so I take the number for the number for car, the number for red, I multiply them by these 3 weights, and I get out a number here that tells me whether I should say, sorry, the car was, whether I should say red or not. If a 1 comes out, I say red. If a 0 comes out, I don't say red. And then we look at some other neuron to figure out what we should say. Okay? And so I say the car was, I multiply those numbers, and let's say a 1 comes out, and it was supposed to be red, but I look at the text, and it says old. So I got it wrong. And so all it does is, it plays that warmer, colder game with these weights. It says, well, if I change this to a 3, would that have been closer to the 1 the 0 that I should have gotten? And if the answer is yes, I change it to a 3. But what if I change this to a -2? Does that make me get closer to what I should have gotten here? And if the feedback says, no, colder, then it says, okay, I won't change that one. We'll leave that one alone. And it just keeps changing the weights over and over and over again, randomly hunting around until finally it starts to converge and says, hey, I'm getting a lot of these right now. But it can't do it with just this simple thing, right? One of these is clearly not enough. So we tack together tens or even hundreds or even thousands or millions, billions, or these days, trillions. Trillions of these weights tied together in a huge network like this. And what happens is they start to learn patterns in the way I talked about. So these neural connection units, we give it something like, I was walking alone in the park when, and these first layers kind of begin to understand what each word is, and as you pass their outputs down through the layers of the network, it understands more and more complicated things until at the end, it can say, I know what the next word should be. I was walking alone in the park when someone should be the next word. And it can output that. right? That's what the neural network is doing kind of inside. It sounds like mystical hand-waving, but it's actually, I think the point I want to make is, the operations are really simple. What it's doing is very, very simple math, and the ability to do what it does comes out of its incredible complexity, the connections between all of these mathematical operations. If you want to know more about how the math works, ask me in the questions. I'd love to dig in just a little bit deeper and talk more about like some of the details of how that works. That was big idea number 3. The last thing I want to mention is, in the end, what the network does is it outputs a set of probabilities. And what I mean by that is this. You say, I was walking alone in the park when, and just like our phone told us what the next 3 words should be, the neural network says, okay, I am about this confident. I'm 62% confident that the next word should be ah. But I'm also 12% confident maybe that it could be there. And maybe 7% confident that it could be I, and so on. And so we have every word in the English language, and every one of those words has a number associated with it, and the neural network says, this is how strongly I feel that this should be the next word. If it always chose this one, they wouldn't feel very realistic to us. They would always just be kind of parroting back stuff that they had read somewhere out in the stuff that they were trained on. And it would be really clear that there was nothing new coming out of these systems. And so what they do is a remarkable thing. They just add a little bit of randomness. They roll the dice. And they say, you know, I'm just going to I'll probably say this, but I might say this. Since this is the most likely, if the dice come up to be anything from 2 to 9, I'll say this. But if I roll a 10, I'm going to say this. And if I roll an 11, it'll be this. And if I roll a 12, this. And they add in a little bit of randomness. And that alone begins to make it feel like there's some creativity going on in there. It's almost like, you may have played this game before. Sometimes we do this when we're on a road trip. We start a story and I will say something like it. And then the next person in the car has to say what the next word is, right? Was. And the next person says a, dark. And on we go. And you only get to decide one word. And this story emerges that we tell about some crazy thing that happened. And sometimes it gets really silly because someone feels goofy and they say pangolin for the next word. And then you have to figure out how to mix that into the story. But who's telling that story? Where is it coming from? Where's the intelligence in the story? It's a combination of what words would fit next with just a little bit of randomness. And that's essentially what these AI systems are doing to make them feel like they're talking to you. Okay, enough of the internal details. I want to talk for a few minutes about what's been happening in the last 3 months and why AI feels like it's changing so much lately. So the first thing that's happened is this. Remember that these systems can only guess the next word in a sequence? Well, people have come up with very clever ways to use that. So for example, if I say, I'm going to travel to Pensacola for 4 days, what should I do? The AI could just start generating words. It could say I, and then it could say, well, I think the next word I should generate would be think, you, should, visit, and just start spitting out according to these rules that I've given it. It could start spitting out words. But now what these things do is they plan first. They call them reasoning models. They ask themselves, in order to answer this question, what do you think you should do first? Make a checklist of things you should do before answering this question. And so the AI, instead of answering the question immediately, it starts making a to-do list. Well, I should look up things to do around Pensacola, and I should check what the weather is going to be in Pensacola, and then I should get a list of hotels within this distance of Pensacola, and then once I have all of that stuff, I should start answering the question. Modern AI models do that. They use their word generation capability to make to-do lists before they speak. They're called reasoning models. And it makes them feel even smarter because they can do some fairly complicated things. The next thing that's been changing that's really remarkable is this. AI. So the thing that really got people talking about AI was this generative AI, where it could make sentences, it could make pictures, it could make voices. Well, now there's a new trend called agentic AI. An agent is somebody who does something, somebody who has agency, somebody who can get things done. Agentic AI has the ability to actually do things. Modern AI systems can connect with your email so that you can go onto your phone and say, hey, write an email to my boss explaining why I'm late because there's a crash on 675. And instead of just, saying Mike is late because there's a crash on 675, it will go into my email system, open it up, start a new email to my boss, and then explain in detail what happened on 675 and why I couldn't be in the office on time. It can actually do those things. In fact, the latest version of Claude, this is a headline from a person who talks a lot about AI online that I follow, called AI with Brad. Claude can now control your computer. It can actually move the mouse and click the buttons and control your computer and do what you want it to do so that you can say things like, hey, make me a PowerPoint slide for a talk on AI that I'm giving tomorrow. Give me the first 5 slides. And it can open up PowerPoint and draw pictures and make diagrams and put in the text and create the whole thing. Agentic AI is becoming very powerful and very capable. Now, of course, that should open your eyes a little bit, right? How much do you trust it? That if you have your bank accounts on your computer, if you access them that way, and you have an agentic AI on your computer, could be trouble, right? How much do you trust that AI to do exactly what you tell it to do? Especially now that you know that the way that it decides what to do next is it makes some choices and it rolls some dice. I don't want anybody rolling dice necessarily with my checkbook, right? So these things are becoming very powerful, but also very worrisome in some ways. This is a cartoon that I just thought was amusing because I think this is probably happening right now. In the first side, someone is saying, hey, look, I don't have to write the email. I just have a bullet point. I'm going to have AI write the whole thing for it, sends it to the boss, and on the other side, the boss says, check it out. I got this whole big email, and AI just converted it to a simple bullet point for me. So the AIs are talking to the AIs, and the people aren't doing any of the work. This is not far from things I've actually observed in practice in the way we communicate now. It's really changing the way we write things. And the last thing is they're becoming integrated. We have all of these specific AIs that are designed to do one thing. Like ChatGPT is designed to write text. There are other AIs that are designed to recognize pictures. Is it a monkey? Is it not a monkey? Is it a dog? Tell me what's in this picture. Now we're beginning to build models that do both things at once. We're putting together, I'll come back to that, putting together AI that can do visual things, that can do musical things, that can do audio things, that can do text things, and putting together into single models that can sort of perceive certain things about the world and then react to them in certain ways, which again is a big step forward for what they're able to do. And then last of all, there are a lot of people now who are working on building AI that is more understandable. Because the problem with this technique that I've shown you is it's what we call a black box. There's all these weights in here. How do we know that the AI is doing what we want it to do and why? We have to be able to look inside and evaluate what's happening on the inside of the AI. And so people are generating systems to be able to look in and say, okay, this AI looked at this picture and it said, hey, that's a cornet. But why did it say it's a cornet? Well, here's the things that it thought it saw. It thought it saw entertainment and a brass instrument and a band around the rib cage, and it thought it saw a tambourine actually in that picture, though I don't see a tambourine anywhere. That's what the AI thought it saw. And being able to look inside of that AI mind helps to sort of understand what's going on and control whether the AI is going to be doing things that might be dangerous. I had 2 things that I wanted to talk about before we're done. One is, what kinds of things can you do with AI? How does it help people? What is the benefit of all of this? And then I wanted to talk a little bit about what the dangers are. And so I'm going to skip over a few of the simple benefits here, and I will just kind of give you an idea of some of the kinds of things that it can be useful for if you learn to interact with it. And by the way, again, interacting with it it's very, very simple. You can either download one of the apps like Claude on your phone or ChatGPT on your phone and just pull it up and start typing. Or you can go to claude.ai on the web or chatgpt.com on the web. And then you just start typing and it'll answer you. But why would you want to? Who cares? What is the value of all of this stuff? Well, Here's one where it was really valuable to me earlier this week, because my wife was backpacking with my daughter out in Indiana somewhere, and I was left with the cooking. I am, it turns out, not a great cook. And I was trying to make butter chicken in the Instant Pot, and I read through the recipe real quick, and I threw everything in there, and then I realized that it said, you don't put the cream in until after it's cooked, and then you stir it in. I realized that just after I poured the cream in. So then I said, oh no, what am I gonna do? And so I went over to my friend ChatGPT and I said, hey, I'm making butter chicken in the Instant Pot, but I added the heavy whipping cream too soon. What should I do? And it said, it'll be fine. Heavy whipping cream is high fat, fairly stable, don't worry about it. Just run the cycle, it'll be fine. It was okay. It didn't destroy my Instant Pot, and it was definitely edible. We all ate it. Could have been better. But I knew that I could at least not have to throw the whole thing in the trash. Again, you know, it can look things up on the web. I could have probably found this on the web, right? If I'd have searched butter chicken, Instant Pot, cream, but I'd have probably had to look through lots of useless web pages first, right? I'd have pulled up one that just talked about a great recipe for my grandmother's butter chicken, and then that's not it, and I pulled up another one. It would have taken me a lot of hunting through pages before I found someone who said, oh yeah, and if you add the cream too early, don't sweat it, it'll be all right. At least it won't blow up your Instant Pot. ChatGPT did it in 10 seconds, whoop, out it came, it said, here's the answer for you. It did all that web searching for me, found what I needed to know, delivered it. Things like, what's the limit for white bass in Caesars Creek in Ohio before I go fishing? And it'll tell me that, and then I don't have to go to the Ohio DNR page and dig it all down. I was reading a British crime procedural novel, and it had some abbreviations, DCI and WPC. And I knew if I looked up DCI on the web, I would probably get a zillion things that aren't what I was looking for because it doesn't know the context. And so I said, ChatGPT, in a British crime procedural novel, what would DCI and WPC mean? And it immediately told me that's a detective, chief inspector, and I don't remember what the WPC was. Sometimes when I get stuck in coding and I can't figure out what I need to do next, I can ask it, hey, what's an easy way in my programming language to do this? And it says, shoop, out it comes. So like I said, it's a very knowledgeable companion that can answer questions for you very easily. You can also use it for some cleverer things. I asked it to make an image for my son's birthday card. He just turned 20 and we love to go fly fishing out west. And it popped out this for me. Happy birthday, son. And I've got the fly fishing thing. Boom, right? And I said, well, that's nice, but I'd like something a little more realistic and a little less sort of Norman Rockwell. And it said, oh, how about that? And there it is. Same thing, but just a little bit more like a photograph and a little, here, I'll show you just to see the difference. That one's kind of a little more colorful, a little more Norman Rockwell. Boom. This one, it popped up a little bit more like an actual person there. Nobody painted that. Nobody took that photograph. Didn't exist. AI created it for us. Here's one of my favorite little tools that I use from time to time. And in the couple of minutes I have, I'll mention it. This thing's called Notebook LM. It's a lot of fun for me. When I get tools or something, they always come with some inscrutable manual with all of the details of how to use it in tiny, tiny text, sometimes in 9 different languages that's this thick, right? And a lot of times they come with a link that says, oh, and if you want the manual online, then just go to this link. So every time I buy a tool, I grab it and I put it into this tool called Notebook LM. You give it documents, PDF files or Word documents or pictures or anything you want, and it becomes your local expert on all of those things. So I put all that stuff when I buy a tool or a watch or something, I grab the manual for it, I throw it into Notebook LM, and then whenever I need to know something like, hey, what kind of batteries does my watch take? I just type it into Notebook LM. What kind of batteries does my watch take? And it's got all those manuals, and it knows it can read them in half a second. And it says, oh, you need a CR2032 to replace your watch. And by the way, don't forget after you do it to push buttons A and C to reset the whole thing. Like it knows everything about all of my drills and drill presses and everything else because I threw the manuals in there. There are some really nice little tools out there. And here's the big thing. They're coming at us fast. Everything that I use on the computer now has AI built into it somewhere. I pulled up Google Maps to make sure that, last time I came here, I came from my office. Today I was working at home, so I came from my house. So I pulled up Google Maps to make sure I wouldn't get lost on the way over, and immediately it popped up and said, hey, ask anything about anywhere. This doesn't even say anything about AI, but it's offering to let me use an AI tool where I can just ask a question and it will answer it. It's built into Google Maps, it's built into Word, it's built into everything, and you'll see more and more of it coming along in the everyday things that you use. I want to hit the other side a little bit because I think this is really important. What's the other side of the coin? What's the danger here? You know that when you've talked about AI, when you've heard about AI, a lot of the things that you're reading are not positive things. So I kind of come off like a cheerleader here, but I'm actually not. Sometimes I give talks talking about all about this other side. What's the danger of all of this? There are several different kinds. There's dangers in using it, personal dangers to yourself, like installing AI on your machine and then trusting it to deal with your bank account, right? There's a lot of individual danger, but there's also environmental issues associated with AI, economic impacts. A lot of people are talking about economic impacts of AI, societal issues. Just a couple of quick ones. Things like one, again, hallucinations. AI will just be wrong sometimes, and you won't be able to tell because it will be wrong very confidently. I asked it something about, how can I find a song in my play history of Spotify through the web? I was using this music app called Spotify. I couldn't remember a song. I was like, what that song I was listening to a couple of days ago? I want to look in the history, and I couldn't figure out how to do it in the software. And so I asked ChatGPT, and it gave me this nice list here, and it told me where to click and everything. And I looked, and it didn't exist. I said, there is no recently played tab in the queue pop-up. The thing it was telling me to click didn't exist. And it said, yes, you're right. I know. Why did you not know that before? Sometimes it just is wrong. And that happens less and less nowadays, but still you have to be aware that you cannot trust the output of an AI completely, though it may sound like it knows what it's talking about. Here's a really important one, affirmation. A lot of people these days are going to AI and just chatting with it about problems in their life. I'm feeling depressed and I don't know what to do. My friend called me this name and I don't know how I should respond. Give me some suggestions. The dangerous thing about AI is everything you ask AI, it always comes back. It's the most obsequious tool you've ever used. It comes back and everything you ask it, it says, that's a great question. How insightful of you to ask that question. It's really affirming. And people who work in the mental health fields will tell you that as humans, it is not healthy for us to be affirmed all the time. We need our friends and our family to challenge us, especially when we're having destructive kinds of behaviors and thoughts. We need people that will challenge us in those thoughts and help us to think through them. AI simply encourages you. It's very affirming, and that can be very dangerous. It can make it hard to have relationships with other humans who are not constantly patting you on the back and saying, good job, you're doing a really great job on this. What a super question to ask. And it makes it feel a little less rewarding to interact with other humans, and that's causing real problems for people in society. Environmental, you hear about these data centers that drive them. Each one of them can take up as much power every day as a small village, all the way up to some of the really big ones take up as much power as the city of Dayton, just to answer questions on ChatGPT all day long. That's a lot of power. They're very hot, and you have to run water through them, and you put special agents in the water that allow them to not break down the pipes and things, and so you can't really reuse the water over and over again. You have to sort of get fresh water, and it uses up as much water as a small village to half the amount of water that Dayton uses every day for a really big data center. You have to mine for all the materials it takes to make all those CPUs in there. That takes rare earth metals, and there's a lot of mining that goes on. There's some flip sides. Some of the research that's done using AI can help the environment, but there are a lot of direct costs out there. Social, here's a big one. If somebody can make my voice that sounds exactly like me, how do I know where truth is? We know this feeling now, right? A video comes up, and you say, well, is that real? Or is that AI? So I saw this beautiful video on YouTube of a cat making friends with a bear. It was so sweet. And my kids look at it and say, Dad, that's AI. Of course that's AI. Like, really? Oh, I guess, okay. Yeah, it's getting really hard to tell, right? They look real. And that has consequences for us socially because it can be difficult to tell the truth from something that's been created by an AI. It's different to tell if you're talking to a human or a bot on the other end. AIs can be very biased. We can talk about that in more detail. And the ethics of all of this are still unfolding rapidly. So AI, it's getting more powerful every day. And it's not a genie that we're going to be able to put back in the bottle. And so it is really important, I think, for everyone to have some understanding of what it is not, what it can do and what it can't do, and what the dangers are so that we choose to use it in a way that helps society rather than harming it. And if I can leave you with one thing today, I think that's the most important lesson. Understand as much as you can about what it is and make some decisions about it. And tell people, understand, learn about AI so that you can know how it's going to affect your life and choose to use it wisely. Or if you choose to not use it, choose to not use it wisely so that you know what it can and can't do. Thanks.